Hello, beautiful souls. Yay. I am so excited to welcome you, kids, parents, families, to the very first episode of the Intuitive Kids podcast. Yay. I am your host and author, Julie Jancis. And here's what I want you to know. Please listen to this first episode, even if it's just you parents. There's some really great info here at the beginning for kids. But it's really going to help families best understand what this podcast is, what this podcast isn't, and how this podcast is going to help you hear your intuition more clearly. So we're going to lay out all the nuts and bolts for you in this very first episode so that you really get a good idea of what we're trying to do here. And this episode goes really deep. It covers a lot, but everything in here needs to be said. So in future episodes, what we're going to do is for kids, just start with one topic at a time. And one episode is going to focus in really on one topic and break it down for kids. This will be probably one of the longest episodes that there are. But again, just because we have to cover all the bases here. If you have ever read the books by Dr. Lisa Miller, then you know her scientific research has shown that the two elements which help a child become a resilient adult with strength to manage life's challenges as an adult, those two things are, one, having a parent or guardian who is spiritual or religious, and two, that parent is also affectionate. So let me repeat that. Having a parent or a guardian who is both spiritual and affectionate is the best predictor of an adult who will be resilient and manage life's challenges with more ease. And as a parent, I know that that's exactly what I want for my child. And that's why I'm starting the Intuitive Kids podcast. This podcast is a space where you kids can come ask questions. You can share your spiritual experiences and not feel alone, because you're going to see that other kids are having those spiritual experiences too. You're going to be able to develop friendships over here. This is a place where no question is silly and all questions are welcome. At Intuitive Kids, we're here to inspire kids to live their most joyful, confident, authentic life. Because you know what, friends? Happiness comes and goes, but we can all learn to live with a constant feeling of joy, love, peace, bliss, ease, and grace. And like I say in my other podcast, Angels and Awakening, that's what makes life like it's living heaven on earth. And I want you to feel that for yourself. So as you're listening to this podcast, I really don't want you to take my word for anything, right? I want you to really use this podcast to experience things for yourself and then to make decisions for yourself based on what it is that you've experienced. So in this, our first episode together, I'd love for us to get to know one another better. I'd also love to get to know you better. If you want to get to know me and want to share a little bit about yourself, what I want you to do is go over to my Facebook group, and your parents can get you in over there, because I know a lot of kids aren't on Facebook. I feel old even saying that. But we have this free group on Facebook. It's called the Angels and Awakening Podcast Tribe. And if you go over there and join that group, you can, with your parents, put up a post about your family, about you, about spiritual experiences that you've had, about questions that you have. And I can see those over there and get back to you. So details on that are in the show notes below. So I'm going to go first introducing myself. I'm going to share the story of how I developed my own intuition. So I'm a mama of a highly intuitive, empathic, highly sensitive 11-year-old girl. And I also have two tiny lap dogs, Lulu and Fluff, who I also treat like my children as well. They're so cute, so soft, so fluffy. We all live with my husband here in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. But growing up as a kid myself, I moved 10 times before I was 16 years old. I've lived all around the United States. And even though that was challenging at times to pick up and move every few years, I learned to make new friends more easily. I still feel scared every time I do it, but I learned how to walk up to classmates and say, "Hey, my name's Julie. What's your name? And do you want to hang out?" In middle school, though, my parents divorced and my dad moved to a different state. I didn't see him that much because back then we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have FaceTime, right? That was back in the 1990s. And I loved my dad so incredibly much. He was just such a fun guy. He taught me how to ride motorcycles. He taught me how to ride snowmobiles and jet skis. I think my favorites are snowmobiles and jet skis because when you fall off, it doesn't hurt as much normally. My dad taught me how to hunt and fish and to be fearless and confident. And he himself was also very highly spiritual, very philosophical, meaning he loved to talk about the meaning of life. So at about 8 years old myself, he and I would have the most incredibly deep spiritual conversations. And it was like during those moments, as I reflect back on them, I feel like he was talking directly to my soul. By the time I was 33, my dad had started a few new families. He was married to his third wife. And on August 5th, 2015, the strangest thing began to happen. At the time, my daughter E was only 4 years old. And when I would brush her hair before preschool, I began to hear this thought in my own internal dialogue. Now, you might ask, Julie, what is your internal dialogue? Well, you have these two voices within you. Everybody has these voices within them. Everyone has an egoic mind. That egoic mind, sometimes they call it the monkey mind. It gets up with you in the morning. It's with you all day long. It just chatters away all day. It's like a constant stream of thought. And you also have intuitive thoughts, and I'm going to teach you all about intuition and what your intuitive thoughts are. But your intuitive thoughts are you connected to your higher self on the other side. God, universe, source can come through your intuitive thoughts with messages for you. Your loved ones on the other side, your angels, can also use your intuitive thoughts to bring messages to you. So back to the story. Starting August 5th, 2015, when I would brush E's hair before school, I would hear this thought within me say, "She needs a hairbrush like I used. She needs a hairbrush like I used." And I remember thinking to myself, that's not me. That voice in my head is not me. I thought this because I can only ever remember using this big old paddle brush my whole life. And when the voice said she needs a hairbrush like I used, I had no clue what the voice meant by this other type of brush. If I had only used one type of hairbrush in my entire life, who was talking to me inside my head, right? So for an entire month, every time I brushed E's hair, I'd hear the same sentence repeat over and over again. She needs a hairbrush like I used. That was the first time something like this had ever happened to me that I realized. And I didn't want to tell my husband or my mom about it because I feared that they would think I was going crazy. So instead, I kept this interesting conversation situation just to myself. Fast forward an entire month. So an entire month goes by, and on September 5th, 2015, I was at work in a meeting with a colleague when a family member of mine just kept calling over and over again. And I knew something was wrong. So I decided to take the call, and I immediately heard, Juge, Dad's passed away. And as soon as I heard this, I saw out of my third eye, my mind's eye, a vision of my dad. It's a lot like a daydream, right? When you have a vision, you see something play out like a daydream within your mind. And in this vision, I was a little girl getting ready for school, and my dad was combing my hair, but he was using a hairbrush I hadn't thought about in over 25 years. My dad always used a unique hairbrush with a wooden handle and boars like bristles. If you're watching over on my YouTube channel, you can see the brush that I'm holding up right now. I got an example of the brush that he used to use. And as soon as I saw this vision with my mind's eye, everything that I had been hearing over the last month, she needs a hairbrush like I used. She needs a hairbrush like I used. It all started to make sense, right? And I didn't even try to say it. The words just came spitting right out of my mouth. I said to my colleague, my dad's been talking to me. And I knew in that moment that the voice that I had been hearing all month long really was my dad. You know, no one in my family had been notified that my dad had passed away, but somehow my dad on the other side figured out a way to communicate with me all the way from heaven. And that felt so incredibly special that he was able to communicate with me using my own internal dialogue, my intuition. And because that felt so special, I wanted to learn how to talk back with him. I wanted to learn how to communicate back with him. So I went on to study with some of the best mediums, people who work with angels, spiritual teachers in the entire world. And by studying with them, I began to develop my own God-given spiritual gifts. Today, as a spiritual teacher, I feel my mission is to help you hear your own intuition clearly, because when you listen to the loving, positive messages that come from your heart, right? That's when people say, listen to your heart. When you're really listening to that, what you're hearing is positive encouragement and guidance from your spirit team. You have a spirit team. Everybody has a spirit team. And your spirit team is made up of God, universe, source energy. You can call God whatever term resonates best or most for you. Your spirit team also includes your angels and your loved ones on the other side. It can include pets that are on the other side. It can include guides that are on the other side. So, did you know that when you can hear your own intuition clearly, you can ask God almost any question that you have, and God will bring you the positive, loving answers that you need? And friends, I say almost because when you have to go take a test, the angels always laugh about this. God's not going to help you with the test answers, unless you've actually done your work to study really thoroughly. So be sure to study for those tests. But pretty much anything other than that, God, your angels, your loved ones in heaven are here to guide you. They're not here to make decisions for you, but they're here to guide you to what it is that you truly want. and also what's best for you and all parties involved. Your spirit team is also here to love you, direct you, and protect you. And they do all of this by sending you loving, positive messages through your intuition, just the same way that my dad was able to connect with me using my own intuition thoughts as well. So before we dive deep into the next episode, there's some things that I really, really want you and especially your parents to know. I'm starting this new podcast for kiddos like my own daughter. I call her E to protect her privacy. E is very highly intuitive. She's very highly empathic. Last year, we moved into a new home, and on the first night that we were here, she came up and she goes, Mom? And I go, yeah. And she goes, there's a woman here. And I knew instantly what she meant. Like there wasn't a physical woman inside our house. But before I went deeper with her, I asked her some questions like, what did this woman look like? And my kiddo went on to describe exactly what the previous woman in this house looked like. Unfortunately, one of the previous owners of this house had passed away. And what happens a lot of times with kids when we connect with loved ones on the other side or different energies that are here on earth is TikTok, social media, movies, TV shows can make connecting with the other side feel very ghosty and scary to kids of all ages. I know I can't even still to this day watch scary movies. Don't ask me about any of them. I haven't seen any of them for that reason. But what I need kids to know right here, right now is this. When you're connecting to your angels, your guides, your loved ones in heaven, to God on the other side, and God's here too, what it feels like is nothing ghosty. You will never connect with anything ghosty. You don't have to feel that whatsoever. Instead, what it feels like is like you're at a huge family party. Have you ever been to a family party, or maybe it was your birthday and you have all your relatives over to your house? And what do those days feel like? For most kids, those days are happy days. Your aunt and uncles are going to want to come up and give you a huge, huge hug. And your parents are hugging and kissing you. And your grandparents, there's just so much love at family parties. When you're connecting with spirit, God, your angels, your loved ones on the other side, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're at a huge family party and that it's just love. So what I was able to tell my daughter in this situation is, this woman wasn't here to stay in our house. She was just here to welcome us. I had felt her presence the entire time that we were purchasing the house. And I actually saw her working with my dad on the other side to make sure that we got this house, because she said we were the ones that were supposed to own this house. Like, she made sure it all happened. And that's a whole angel story in and of itself, how it did end up coming to be. But I think she wanted us here, and she wasn't here to stick around for forever. She just wanted us to feel welcome and know that this was our space now. And so after that night, we really didn't feel her presence again. I want to say this to both kids and parents. Here's my promise to you with this podcast. I have my master's degree in teaching. I was going to be an elementary school teacher after working in corporate America for so many years. And I want you to know that I take working with your kids, with children, very, very, very seriously. I've spent years within the spiritual community as well. And this is what I know for sure. There's a lot of truth out there. There's a lot of great people doing a lot of great work. And at the same time, there's also a lot of lies out there within the spiritual community. There's a lot of people just making stuff up. And I am not a professional mental health person. I am not a counselor or therapist. But I want you to know two words that fall into the counseling therapy industry. And those two words are egoic syntonic and egoic dystonic. And this, knowing these two terms and what they mean really helps you sort through when you're working with spiritual topics, who you feel like you want to work with and who you feel like you don't want to work with. So you can think of egoic syntonic as learning new things that feel in alignment with your goals, your values, your beliefs. These things feel yummy and delicious, and you just love learning about these spiritual topics. Maybe you just can't get enough of them. And then there's the egoic dystonic. I want you to think of that as learning new things that really don't feel in alignment with you. Maybe just something about them feels off or wrong, or maybe it's just not for you. Sometimes what we do as human beings is think to ourselves, well, you know what? If this person is telling me all of these great things that I believe to be true, we try and sometimes make the wrong things fit. And you don't want to do that with spiritual work. When it comes to your own spirituality, what God and the angels say is that when something feels like it's just pure love within your body, within your heart, it's just loving and positive, that is when you're in this egoic syntonic state and you're really loving learning. That's where we want you to be. We really don't want you to fall into this egoic dystonic state. So as children grow spiritually, it's so beyond important for them to stay in that egoic syntonic where they feel safe, they feel secure. And kids, if you don't, tell your parents always, right? Something about this just doesn't resonate with me. Whatever doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to accept it as your truth. You can take the things that you resonate with, that you align with, that feel good to you, and just attach to those. And the things that don't make you feel safe or secure, or that you're just kind of like, I don't really believe that. You don't have to believe those things, right? I'm saying all of this because as I've worked within the spiritual community, I've seen adults who've had a psychotic break due to negative, egoic, dystonic, so-called spiritual information, but it's really not, that they were really attaching to. And so I don't want you to go that way. The reason that I spent 2 years talking about starting this kids podcast and 1 year putting in all of the work to start this kids show is that I spent hours and hours and days and weeks, talking to therapists, talking to counselors, talking to teachers, coaches, and other professionals who work with kids about what this podcast should be, what it should include, what is the right content for kids to hear, and what really needs to stay out of this show. So I hope that you know I've tried to go above and beyond to make this podcast a safe spiritual community. I personally think about it as our own spiritual church where kids of all ages can learn to grow and learn all together in a safe space. In doing the work to start this podcast, it was also recommended that we gear information towards kids ages 8 to 15. So that's what we did. With that said, as we were getting ready and preparing all year for this podcast to launch, I've talked to a lot of adults who I've bounced topic ideas off off of, and they're like, Julie, I think I'm going to love this podcast too. And that's what the angels say. It's that a lot of adults will love this podcast, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up to 100, right? And a lot of kids under the age of 8 will get tremendous value out of hearing these concepts earlier in life, even if they don't understand it all just yet. Continuing to hear this information over and over again in the background, just as we do in church when we bring our kids to church and have them in the pews with us, and they're hearing a pastor talk or a priestess, right? I would love to see more women in leadership roles within religious institutions. It's good for kids to hear these things over and over again because, like we said at the beginning, what makes resilient adults, strong adults that are able to handle challenges with more ease is really spirituality, having a parent who is spiritual, who's also affectionate. So I really hope that you feel the love coming from me. I hope that you feel the love and safety and security coming from this space, the Intuitive Kids podcast. So my promise to you is my intention will always be to keep your kids safe, to help them grow their intuition, and in doing so, become more confident and resilient. Here's what I need you to promise me. If at any time you're listening to the Intuitive Kids podcast and feel the content is not in alignment with my values, please email me, contact me over the website, intuitivekids.com, and I will openly take your suggestions into consideration. And I thank you for allowing us to partner with one another in this way. Some other things to know. 4 years ago, I started the top number 9 spiritual podcast. It continues to rank very, very high. Angels and Awakening, which receives millions of downloads each year. Every Monday, I interview a world-renowned spiritual teacher, and every Thursday, I have a guest on there to share their positive, loving angel stories. Those are stories of God working miracles in people's lives. And there are families who say that they listen to my original podcast, which is still ongoing. And some of the content is more geared towards adults. So I just wanted you to know that because in the past, over the past 4 years over there, I've used some words that I probably shouldn't have used. Maybe you hear them from your parents every once in a while, maybe not. But I just wanted people to know that there will never be any colorful language over here. I do think that the Angels and Awakening podcast is a great resource for kids 8 to 14. I really parent openly with my child and just share a ton with her. And if that is your same parenting style, then I think you'll really love that podcast too. One other thing that I really want you to understand is you should know how my work is different. So I don't just do Reiki. Reiki energy healing is when you channel God's energy through your body to another person who needs it. And when you get Reiki energy healing done, it's a completely silent practice. When you go work with a local Reiki master teacher to learn Reiki, they're not teaching you how to develop all of your spiritual gifts. They're just teaching you energy healing, how to channel the energy through your body to help another person, benefit another person. When you're doing that, Reiki entails a client lying on a massage table, and the energy healer is gently laying hands on safe places on the client's body. And a loving energy comes through the energy healer's hands to the client's body. That's how it works. But I founded Angel Reiki Energy Healing because when I work with a client, I see their entire spirit team surrounding them. So, like I said, everyone has a spirit team consisting of God, angels, guides, loved ones in heaven. And your spirit team is responsible for helping guide you, direct you, protect you in your life. The reason I founded Angel Reiki is that when I'm working on a client and that client's spirit team comes in with messages for him or her, I share those positive, loving messages with my client. And my sessions are really readings, so I'm talking the entire time. And I'll go into detail on this in a separate podcast episode, but what you need to know now is when you go through my Angel Reiki school, I teach you how to develop all of your spiritual gifts, whether that be mediumship or intuition or working with angels, seeing aura colors, talking to pets in heaven, and just dozens of more spiritual gifts that can come in. And what we do is we teach you how to fuse them all together to work with all of your spiritual gifts all at once. It's kind of like a one-stop shop where you don't have to go to all these different places or go through all these different courses. You can just go through one and really have everything that you need. And what we've also done is we're allowing children, anybody 17 and younger, to go through the program with an adult. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, that is something that we do. You can learn more over at intuitivekids.com. As you listen to this podcast, again, I often refer to God as God, but what I want you to know is there's not one name for God. God did not come down to humans and say, "Call me God, that is my name." In fact, the first record of man asking God what their name is, the response from God was, "I am." And so you can call God I am. You can call God any name that resonates with you, like all that is, spirit, unconditional love, source, universe. And as a family, it would be an excellent idea for you all to chat about what term resonates best with each family member. And everybody can use the term that works best for them. All right, friends, one more thing about this. God is not male or female. So I refer using the pronouns they, them to talk about God. Our souls do not have gender. And so we're going to learn more about that in the next episode. But I just wanted you to know that I refer to God as they, them. That brings me to my next point. My intention with the Intuitive Kids podcast and all of the work that I birth into this world is the equal access and fair treatment of all souls. I believe all souls are equal. I personally identify as the B in LGBTQIA2S plus community, and having grown up in an ultra Catholic church and then a mega Christian church when my parents divorced, just as it was not okay to talk about mediumship or intuition in the church, so too it was not okay to identify as part of the LGBTQIA2S plus community, without the fear of people trying to invalidate you, change you, or ostracize you. So instead of revealing myself fully to the world when I was a kid myself and a teenager, I kept a lot of myself hidden away. And as an adult, I've taken that experience as a kid and I've created inclusive spiritual communities where all can feel safe and at home and where all can be themselves, including me. So I'm not going to shy away. I'm not going to hide away from talking about topics like fair treatment and equal access of BIPOC persons and the LGBTQIA2S plus community, or pronouns, or where religion has gone wrong. right here on this podcast, the message is love for all. Here on this podcast, we send love to every soul and we pray for every soul here on earth. So I use the words guardian or parent to refer to the adult in your life. You might see me use those interchangeably. And this podcast is really intended for kids and guardians to listen together as a way for your family to connect. I'm not going to talk to kids in some baby voice. I know that my voice sounds youngish to begin with, even though I'm 40 years old at the time of recording this. But what I mean to say here is I'm not going to talk down to younger souls, because when you think about it, if we've all lived thousands of lifetimes, I really truly believe that all souls are equal. And just because you're maybe 8 or 9 years old or 10, maybe your soul is older than I am, than my soul is. And maybe you have lived many more lifetimes than I have. I am here to listen to kids too. That's a big, big part of this podcast. I want to hear, because the wisdom that is going to come from this next generation, I believe it's going to be incredibly healing for the world. Not that you're here to save the world, but kids, just simply by being yourself, you don't have to be anyone else. By just being here, by just being a human being, you get to use your vibration, the natural energy of your soul. And I believe that just you being you is going to work miracles here in this lifetime. So I'm really excited to chat with you and listen to you and hear everything that you have to say. Oh, and kids too. If you're ever listening to this podcast and I'm going too fast, because I can talk a little fast sometimes when I get nervous or when I have anxiety, or I use a word that you don't understand, you can simply ask your guardian to pause the episode so that you can ask a question or talk through something. And then once you have your answer, just press play and keep going. And kids, again, with your parent or guardian's help, I would love for you to introduce yourself and your family to me over on my free Facebook group. It's called Angels and Awakening Podcast Tribe, and the link is in the show notes. So lastly, with your support, we've been able to reach some weeks over 65,000 people per week. And it's with all of the free offerings that we have. There's so many on the website that people just don't realize. We have worldslargestprayernetwork.com, where we're constantly praying for others. If you have a prayer request, you can share it over there. We have these 2 podcasts. We have tons of free offerings. And we're able to reach so many people because of your support. And you can support this show by one of the next 5 to 6 things. You can support us by joining the Angel membership. I have an Angel membership where all of my past courses, there's an entire year where you go through a new course every month. All of my past teachings, workshops, group healings, are all on there for you to listen to the past content. There's resources for both parents, adults, and coming January of 2023, all new kids content. We're going to be walking through kids, an entirely new kids section in the Angel membership. There'll be, for both kids and adults, a new energy healing, clearing for the entire group. It's not like a personal session. It's like a group healing, but we have one for almost every week throughout 2023. So if you're in the Angel membership, you get access to all of that. And if you join the Angel membership in future years, you always get access to the things that we've done in the past. You can also take my Angel Reiki School. So again, in the Angel Reiki School, that is here not just to teach you energy healing. We're going to teach you mediumship, working with angels, how to develop your intuition to the max. We're going to teach you how to bring through intuitive messages from the other side. And everybody's spiritual gifts are different, but they all start to come out in this program, which kids can do with their parents. And it's so fun. I think that we are going to start to see kids in high school starting their own business as intuitive healers, spiritual teachers, and I want to be a part of that. You can come through the Angel Reiki School, and once you develop all your spiritual gifts in there, you'll be ready to start your own business. So high schoolers, middle schoolers, if you don't want to be working, at a local establishment and you want to start your own business, this is a great teaching opportunity for you and learning opportunity and growth opportunity for you over in the Angel Reiki School. Friends, you can also book a session with me. I have healers on my team who do sessions as well, but you can always book a session if you want to go deeper, if you want a reading yourself, if you want to talk about your messages from the other side, or if you have questions. But if you're under 18, you definitely have to have a parent book that for you. And if the parent wants to sit in on the session, I absolutely encourage that 110%. You could purchase my book. It's called Angels and Awakening. You can leave a review so that others can find our podcast. That's really how people find podcasts, is leaving 5 stars and a positive review. And you can also follow me over on TikTok and Instagram at Angel Podcast. I only have one account. I'm not, as a mama and a business owner, able to manage all these different accounts for different parts of the business. So I only have one account at Angel Podcast. And there's a lot of scammers out there right now. So just beware. I'm never going to message you and ask you to buy a session or anything. Those folks, scammers, they often use misspelled names, and I'll never send you like a friend request or a message first, but I do always try and respond when you send me a message. So for details on all of those services that I just listed, you can visit intuitivekids.com, and that website is listed in the show notes. Kids, one more thing. And I know I'm calling you kids too. If you're older, you're like 18 listening to this, you're like, Julie, I'm not a kid anymore. Technically, children are considered to be anywhere from 0 to 18. But I would absolutely love to have children on the podcast. Anyone 0 to 18 who has had a spiritual experience that they want to talk about, or maybe you have a spirit question or an intuition related question, come on the show. Let's talk about it together. If you'd like to be on the show, again, you can contact me through the website, intuitivekids.com. And a few kind of disclaimers here, right? We got to check off all the boxes here. Parents, well, I try and vet every single guest who comes on this podcast thoroughly before they're on the show. There are times where people change, or they'll do something, or they'll say something that does not align, not on the podcast, like in their personal life, right? But it doesn't align with my values or how I believe the other side to work. So please just understand that I cannot control any other person. And therefore, while I do have guests on my show, I cannot personally recommend any program or service or person outside of my company. Also, parents, I want you to know your children, you know your children best, and you must always do what is in the best interest of your child at all times. So when we're talking about spiritual topics, and there are some heavy topics that we have to touch on to do this work, like depression, sadness, grief, intrusive thoughts, shadow work, not believing everything that you hear. The list goes on for a very long time. why do we touch on these topics? Because kids have it at their fingertips anyway. I know my daughter does. They're hearing about it regardless of whether or not we as parents are talking about it at home. And if you read up on what is happening, there is, I believe, absolutely an epidemic of kids who do not know how to handle and process their feelings. And you're seeing it manifest in a lot of different ways that we don't want here on earth. So the topics that you hear about on the podcast are a great starting point each episode where you can then continue the conversation as a family at home or in the car. I get so many emails about this every year. I can't even count the number of them. And while I do try my best to read the thousands of messages that flow in, I can't always read all of them. And so what I need from parents is for you to always do what you feel is best for your child at all times. Maybe we're talking about a heavy topic one day here on the podcast and you're like, nope, we don't have capacity for this as a family today. This is, we're just going to tune into another episode that's just more, ease energy. I believe wholeheartedly 110% in professional therapy and spiritual work. These two things go together hand in hand so well. And I really do highly recommend ongoing professional therapy and counseling. One more time, friends, I can't stress enough. No one on the other side is ever going to tell you to hurt yourself or another person. They're never going to ask you to give negative messages to another person. It just doesn't happen. The other side can only bring through loving, positive messages through your intuition. So as we journey through this podcast together over the years, just remember that your angels, God, your loved ones on the other side, your guides, pets on the other side, they can only bring loving, positive messages into your intuition, into your consciousness. Anything else is always from the egoic mind. All episodes, I just wanted you to know, are recorded months in advance. We live in a time, day, and age where things are happening very rapidly. So if you hear something and it doesn't jive with current events, just know that it's because I'm a mama and I'm a business owner, and we try and reach, sometimes 65,000 people in 1 week. And it really helps me that I can record way far in advance some of these podcast episodes. And one more thing, I just wanted to read my disclaimer over here. Intuitive Kids is a podcast designed to provide information and motivation to you, with the understanding that Julie Jancis, me, and my team do not intend to render any type of psychological, medical, mental, emotional, legal, religious, business, or any kind of professional advice, nor prescribe the use of any technique or practice as a form of treatment. Neither Julie Jancis, her team, nor any other associated parties shall be liable for any physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, financial, business, or commercial damages, including but not limited to special, incidental, consequential, or other damages. Julie Jancis, her companies, her team, and other associated parties assume no responsibility for your actions and their consequences accrued from the advice and strategies in this podcast. Always consult your physician or therapist when considering use of meditation or energy healing techniques like the ones in this show. Always make sure to practice meditation in an environment that is safe. Do not engage in meditation activities while driving a car or operating any kind of machinery. This podcast includes discussions on some heavy topics. While I've taken great lengths to ensure the subject matter is dealt with in a compassionate and respectful manner, it may be troubling for some listeners, and discretion is advised. By continuing with listening to and participating in this podcast, you give your consent and agree to everything in this disclaimer. Friends, thank you for letting me read through that legal verbiage and just make sure that everybody is on the same page. I am so ready. I hope you are too, to dive into a whole bunch of spiritual topics, exploring empathy, exploring intuition, exploring how the other side works, exploring why we're here, how to talk to angels. I'm so excited to teach you how to dive deeper within yourself and connect with your own intuitions. Friends, just know that you are so incredibly loved by God, universe, source, and your spirit team. And your angels are just so excited to teach you the language of the universe, how it works, so that you can begin seeing miracles show up in your everyday life. Friends, I'm so excited. Join me for the next episode on oneness. Bye, everybody.